Hello and welcome to Springboard, your virtual university. My name is Albert Ocran, welcoming you on behalf of Team Springboard, ably led by Comfort. This is your most inspirational show where we open up the biggest conversations about issues that concern you and I. Your virtual university is brought to you by the Springboard Ratio Foundation and proudly sponsored by MTN Pulse Just Be, the Enterprise Group Enterprise Your Advantage, UMB Bank, celebrating 50 years in banking, and Central University, Ghana's premier private Christian university. Our media partners are the Multimedia Group and the Graphic Business. Today we turn our attention to tips for the unemployed. That topic alone by itself is very attractive. Globally, unemployment is a big issue in every continent, and particularly in Africa, we have a peculiar challenge with over 600 million young people aged under 25 in sub-Saharan Africa alone. This represents both an opportunity for economic development and a threat because of the obvious implications of unemployment. What should those hundreds of thousands of people who come out of universities, apprenticeships, and so on do when the jobs are not available? My guest for today is backed by a popular demand to give us some ideas about how the unemployed can chart their way into a desirable future. Professor Emeritus Stephen Adei is my guest. Prof, good to see you again.
Me too. Thank you.
Thank you for those two amazing sessions in the engine room, and then that's very awesome session about tips for financial independence. We are fortunate to have you for a third session on the unemployed. Let's start by contextualizing how big is the issue of global unemployment and then the African situation.
Much bigger than the world has ever seen since the 1930s, when we had the Great Depression. So in terms of unemployment, it is the worst for the world over the past 90 years. We, the developing or underdeveloped countries then, did not experience much of it because we were mostly rural economies, informal sector, not having a very small formal sector. So we were just above the situation the industrial countries were about almost 3 centuries ago. So we didn't experience it. But in the 1930s, the Great Depression brought so much hardship and unemployment that indirectly it is what gave rise to the Second World War, with Hitler riding on the back of it and almost destroyed the world economy. So this is how big it is. In our time, also exacerbated by the COVID and of late also the Ukrainian war, the advanced economies, which hitherto has had a very low unemployment rate, basically theirs was what we call frictional unemployment, people changing jobs, cyclical unemployment. And actually, the economists have a very mauvaise, as the French would say, bad concept of when there is so-called total employment, there's a certain basic unemployment which is assumed to be part of total employment because of people changing jobs and other things. And also, they had the booms and the best of the business cycle, so therefore sometimes. But at this moment, we are faced with serious structural unemployment, with the economies of Europe, of the Americas experiencing their own unemployment rate in double-digit unemployment, which is unprecedented for almost 90 years. But when we come to Africa, ours is what we call structural unemployment. And the structural employment has to do not so much with this cyclical or people changing jobs, some demand supply type of changes in the short term, but the structure of our economies, our labor force, our sectors For example, agriculture is shedding labor, whilst even those who are left don't have the technology to improve their productivity, whilst the industry is not expanding enough. There's a structural constraint. Services have been there for in Ghana. Services now account for more than 50% of GDP. But this petty trading and other things is not what the services that are that productive. So it's serious. And even though officially, if you measure it by American standards, they will say unemployment is between 13 and 15% in Ghana. I am inclined to side with the government statistician that, especially among the younger people, we are almost moving towards 1 in 2 being unemployed. And that's
so that's about 50%.
Yes. I think he mentioned at 49, but that's whatever distance. You can never measure it accurately. So the level of unemployment is very, very high. And the likelihood that if you lose a job, you may not get some for quite a while. With graduates, some spending about 5 years to 10 years before landing on their first job. The politicians will say unprecedented.
What are the implications for those who may not be very familiar with these economic concepts? What are the implications for families, for individuals, for communities, for the nation at large of having a young population that has no jobs?
And at this moment, a lot of middle income also, not as high as the young people, but high level, I would say high level of unemployment. At the personal level, unemployment can be very devastating. It erodes your self-confidence. You know, it's a sort of social dislocation. It's associated with even sometimes having mental ill health when you feel that you are not worth it. You know, so the loss of relationships, you know, workplace is a very important socialization medium. From the family, you go to you spend all your days, working days at the workplace, social relationship, and then, of course, weekends, if you go to church, you may have. But the workplace is a socialization one. Then there are the economic implications. You know, when you are unemployed, and then you have to, as an adult, have to depend upon the charity of your family. We don't have social security, social safety net for you. You just don't feel that you are what you ought to be. So at the personal level, in fact, that is where it is most devastating. Unless, and we'll come to that, unless the people are helped to cope with it, and we'll come to the solutions later. But at the family level, I've seen, you know, the other day, one of my mentors calling me, can you help with my grandson? And I said, look, I am handicapped. I've retired for 13 years. But let him send his CV, hoping that he will be able to teach one of the subjects. But these days, people go to school, they learn political science. We will come to some of the courses for the unemployment later on. So you cannot fit. The only place that I could have easily fitted it is now school, but then he doesn't have the subjects to do so. So families, both parents and those younger people are really wondering, is it worth it? In some cases, especially the less educated, the graduates from the BEC, WASI, can easily be recruited as, you know, agents of social unrest. That was part of the Arab Spring, when people feel that they are hopeless and they don't have anything in the future. Anybody who promises them, that he will make the situation better, and as the politicians also do, they will follow him. And it can be a source of conflict or unrest in society. But at the national level, it's a question of it affects development and growth. Growth means increases in GDP per capita, because your major resource is not being used, a large proportion. Labor is a major resource. And if you don't learn how to use them, For example, I've always advocated that we should use different methods of construction of roads. We don't need to have bitumen and other things with high import content. Other countries, when I go to Rome, I used to go to, and I don't go there now, because when I was in the UN, and Rome is one of our headquarters with the FAO and the IFAD there, I drive on roads which were built during Caesar's time, the Appian Way. And in Rome itself, they have left some of the roads not intact. It's interesting when we are, it's like ripple. But they used to bake bricks.
Like cobblestones, those cobblestones?
Yes, cobblestones, bricks, and other things. And they have lasted 2 millennia. And why? So what I'm saying is that we can use them and use them. Otherwise, we are losing a valuable resource. And over time, they get de-skilled. In other words, if they come from school and they are not used over time, they get de-skilled. And even how, if you want to use them again in the national development, you must have a way of short-term improving their capacity, their self-confidence, their skill components, ICT competencies before, because unemployed people often lose their skills.
Let me come to the causes. Would you suggest, for instance, that the way we educate or socialize our children, our society as a whole, is a contributing factor to the level of unemployment?
A major one. There are several of them. And first of all, attitude. I always say that somebody wrote a book, Jeffrey, says that, attitude is everything. I say that is an exaggeration, but nevertheless, attitude is very important. When I'll give you a little personal example. When I finished Teachers College, I had 3 months before our posting in September. We finished in June, early July. Did you know what I did during that time? I was a farm laborer, and I was also going, we call it contract. That means in the farm, you take some job together and you bargain with the farmer or making a path, and then how long you take is your business, so you can do it quicker. And I was doing it. And the reason why I was doing it, that I didn't see farming or being a farm laborer as below me as a young certificate A teacher. So attitude, I think that we have, our colonial history has made white collar job the job. For example, people have finished university, they are scrambling for being clerks to be paid 800 Ghana cedis, the NAPCO. How they line up, do you know how much? It's 750 or 850. And yet, if you ask the same person to go and work on a construction site and be paid 100 Ghana cedis a day, 3,000, he says, do you know me? I went to the University of Ghana, I was taught by Professor Jumpo, so I can't do it. This is for the uneducated. So first, our whole orientation of what constitutes job is wrong.
Wow.
Number 2, and that comes from the type of education that we give. We actually train people to get a certificate and then go out to look for a job. That was okay during my time, whereby when I finished Legon, I had 4 jobs. To be an economist at the Ministry of Finance, economist at the Bank of Ghana, to be an assistant bank manager of Barclays Bank, and then to be an officer of Capital Investments Board. And that's where I stopped looking for a job. But I had these 4, and of course, in addition, I had a scholarship to go and do my master's. So, because of that, during the colonial time, they needed a few. And even during our time, their white-collar jobs were sufficient to go around. That is only at a lower level of underdevelopment. And I remember when we were studying development economics, Golda Meir, the Asian, was that the Asian crisis or so. You know, you read about India, people with PhDs riding taxis, driving taxis. And we said, oh my goodness, with my first degree, I have 4 jobs, and India people. But there's a phase in development. So the second is that we are in a phase, there's a phase of development in which the job openings in the public sector, in the modern sector, is outpaced by the production of the people from the educational system. Then, and if at the same time your people have not been oriented with the skills, the attitudes to explore, to become entrepreneurs, to work in areas where there's demand, it then compounds the situation. But on the other hand, there are another cause of it. Our economy, even though could not have maybe absorbed all of them, by now we should have expanded enough to be able to absorb a lot of them. The economy we have not well managed our economy. The real sector has not been growing as it is. So therefore, the opportunities are not growing as it is. And people look to the public sector, forgetting that the public sector, and sometimes our politicians make people think that they are responsible for employing Ghanaians. Whether Mahama or Kufuor, they do not directly employ Ghanaians, because the public sector of Ghana to date, at most, exaggerated, will be 750,000 workers. Assuming half of the Ghanaian 32 million are in the labor force, it is 1/16, less than 6% of Ghanaians are employed by the government. So they shouldn't give the illusion. We'll come to that, why youth employment, you start and other things. But the main cause is that government at best is a facilitator. And that's why we'll come to the creating the environment of employment of Ghanaians. And this idea that the government is responsible for employing directly Ghanaians should be abused. So the lack of growth of our economy, and then the technologies we use, is good for us. I don't think that we should go through all the steps of development that the developed countries go. I mean, come on, you cannot say that. No, have 30 typists. Don't use the voicemail to type it. No, but there are certain areas where you deliberately have to adopt certain technologies in terms of road construction and the rest, which will be a bit labor intensive. So the way our economy has been managed has also been a contributory factor to the development of unemployed. And let me end by saying that the global situation has not been favorable, but I don't say that anybody who thinks that the world must change to get you employed, you say, but the global situation has not been too favorable, and we have not made an effort if you are an underdeveloped country, you have to look for niches, and where you have comparative and competitive advantage. For example, even the minerals we have, we take it all out. If we say that, look, nobody can take raw gold out of Ghana. The question is this: what will they do? Because gold is specific to your ground. Therefore, they have no choice. To make money, they will process the gold here. And so there are certain policies we can do in order to increase the rate of our economic development and looking for our niches in the world, because the world will not stop for you unless you find how you can get onto the train while it's still moving. You are in trouble.
This is Springboard, your virtual university. My guest for today, Professor Emeritus Stephen Adei, helping us to understand some issues around unemployment. We'll be coming very shortly to the tips for those who are unemployed. But for this first part, we've been trying to understand how big the issue is. And he says it's it's as big as can be and can be compared only to the Great Depression 90 years ago in the 1930s, where things got so bad that it led eventually to the World War that brought Hitler to the fore. He's saying that the African situation is even more challenging because it's a structural issue and therefore requires a different outlook, and in some cases, deliberate policies that are made with our situation in mind to create opportunity for our young people. He's ending on the point that we need to find our own niche and then take some tough measures to work for our advantage in our part of the world. Before we even go to the tips, let's talk about underemployment.
Underemployment, okay.
Before the person says, I'm employed, but from where you sit, one year crank, yeah. Let's talk about underemployment and why we cannot ignore it.
Very, very important. In fact, that is so widespread that if we add the underemployed, we will be, in fact, most Ghanaians are underemployed. In other words, what they can produce, they are producing far below. I mean, the civil servants are taking the government statistician to task by saying that, they are paid 3,400, they work 4,430. Actually, they are not even producing what they are paid, let alone making a profit. That is serious underemployment. Do I agree with him? The answer is yes. Not by the figures, but I've always said that the average Ghanaian is overpaid. And what I mean is not that he is getting far more than he needs to survive. In fact, he needs more to survive, but does not generate what they are capable of doing. And let me give you a case in point, and I will come and tell you that when I came to Gimpa, do you know that, interestingly, we had approximately 400 staff, of which eventually we had to separate about 40%. But when I was leaving, we were having approximately 400 staff. Of course, the composition has changed. The quality, there's more teachers and there are things. So it's not exactly, but the same quality of labor. But their turnover was $500,000, and 9 years after, dollars, 9 years after, the turnover was $10 million. This shows that they, even at that level, they were totally producing far beyond their capacity. I believe that teachers, most teachers in the public sector, are actually producing at best in the lower levels about half their capacity. A lot of people, they work for about half the time. If you are a part-time worker, when you want to be full-time, you are underemployed. You go to, have you been seeing the size of farms which are made when you are going by even the roadside? Half an acre. I mean, when somebody is working on half an acre, not on an intensive farm, because in half an acre you were fertilizer, irrigation, high-value products like flowers or cabbages, and producing about 4 times a year. But this is half a year, half an acre. He plants corn, and then when he finishes, he puts cocoa yam in it, and the whole year, when he goes and brush it, and the other one sitting under the tree. And it's over and over again. And so the underemployment, which is actually, so that if somebody is half unemployed, if you were to add them on with the 3/4 unemployed, a quarter unemployed, then we are a gargantuan. That is where we are. Where we are.
This is Springboard of Virtual University. My guest, Professor Stephen Adei, helping us to break down the issue of unemployment. I'll take a brief break. When I come back, let's find out. So what should that young person who holds a degree do? What should that young person who has gone to learn a trade do? What should somebody who says, I left one job in transition going to what I assumed would be my next job in a week's time, and after 4 years, I still am sitting at home writing applications. What should they do? And by the way, should some people look at themselves and conclude that they are underemployed and therefore need to make a change in their career path. These are big conversations. When we come back, let's touch on those issues with some very priceless tips with Professor Stephen Adei. Please don't go away.
There once was a man who had it all. He had skill, he had charisma. He was loved by all, but above all, he knew the importance of helping others, lifting others up. He knew the importance of giving other people an advantage so that they too would use that advantage to help others. All you need is that advantage that sets you apart from the rest. And when you discover that advantage, life's challenges don't seem so daunting anymore. That's where we come in. Enterprise, your advantage.
UMB was established in 1972 as the premier bank for the corporate and private sector in Ghana. From our very beginning, as the only Ghanaian bank serving all categories of businesses, we set a standard for excellence and innovation. Over the past 45 years, we've built a financially healthy and strong bank, demonstrated our commitment to our customers and to growing businesses, and exhibited originality and innovation at every turn. At UMB, our focus is built around people, service, products and technology. These are the key to our present success and our future triumphs. At UMB, we're poised to make a difference not only with our customers, but also in the banking industry. We invite you to share in our future. Our future starts now with you.
Central University, we are not just giving theoretical knowledge, but also real-life practical immersion. Our projects and research are targeted at solving real-life problems within our built and a natural environment. My name is Che Joseph Bafo, an architecture student. The faculty and facilities available to us make us industry ready. The projects I'm working on recently won an award when my colleagues and I visited the Netherlands. Central University makes you industry ready.
Welcome back to Springboard, your virtual university, brought to you by the Springboard Roadshow Foundation in partnership with MTN Pulse, the Enterprise Group, UMB Bank, Central University, our media partners, the Multimedia Group, and the Graphic Business. My guest for today, Professor Stephen Adei, helping us to touch on the issue of unemployment. And just before we signed off the first part, also touching on underemployment. He's saying that if we add his own estimate of unemployment is probably 1 out of 2, and if we added the underemployed, we will be probably in a situation where most Ghanaians are operating way below their capacity or their potential to be productive. Prof, if a person is sitting down today unemployed and saying, thank God for this discussion, tell me, Prof, what should they do? How do we turn this around? And even more importantly, what should the individual do? Because you typically will say people should take responsibility for their own lives. What should the individual do?
First of all, let me say one thing which will shock people before they. I think that ultimately an adult is responsible for their own lives. I think that if anybody who is unemployed is blaming the government, blaming their parents, blaming their school and everything else, excuse me to say, they are being irresponsible. Because the essence of an adult is being fully and personally responsible for your condition. That others are now becoming to are contributory to make it easier for you or not is another thing. You know, when I was a young man, of course I was a graduate, so therefore it is not that young. I used to say that I will never be unemployed. And what I meant by not being unemployed, is that I would never at any time be gainfully not engaged. And even if it means my helping some old ladies, some children, whether I'm paid for or not, because people must learn for their own sense of self-esteem and security, must learn to be always gainfully engaged, paid or unpaid. The reason is this: that is very important for you to feel that you are worth yourself. And there's no, let me use a religious cliche, but that God never make a junk. There's the Americans used to have some. So the first thing is that when you are unemployed, you must change your attitude and not think that because you don't have a job, you are worthless. You are no less a human being than the one who is passing by with a four-wheel drive and looking for something to do. You know, when I started Ghana Christian International School, somebody called me. There's a young man who is unemployed. And I said, what? He says he has gotten geography first class and he hasn't gotten a job. And I said, and you are worried about him? Geography first class. In his neighborhood, if he sets up a table to say that in his veranda, he's going to help the children in the environment to pass their BEC or WASI well. No charge. He will immediately get about 10 people. And let me tell you, within 2 weeks, the parents will be so happy that they will be giving him sufficient money to live on. And that is the beginning of setting up a school. So I just want to say this because not everybody, there are some people who are handicapped by other things, must learn first and foremost to be humble, take the responsibility. In the humility side also, there are certain jobs, quote unquote, people think it is below them. I don't believe that. It's only in our system. It's part of our acculturation. When you go to America, the average garbage collector is a graduate, some with postgraduate degrees. Anyway, they pay them well also. And they make a difference. So, for example, I don't think that they are that rich, but I remember one day when I was in the UN, I like Kofi Brokuman. So when I come and I don't get anywhere else. I go to the airport, that road, Mansfield Hotel. They are so smart. Yes, East Legon. They always have plantain. And I'll go and sit down with them. And thank God with my size, and when I was in the UN, no Ghanaian knew me much at Athens. Sit down with them, and I buy it, and I eat it there, and I chat with them. And I tell them, can you make 10 Ghana cedis a day? And that time, that was profit. They said, yes. I said, no, you are on your way to becoming a millionaire if you know how to invest it and everything else. And I was trying to educate them at Athens. The average graduate will not want to sell a plantain. But if I'm sure those people selling plantain there make at least 2,000 cedis a month. And yet they are looking for 600 jobs. So there's a need for a certain change. And we must help the young people, because they say that during your time, and it's true, during my time, when I finished university, there was 4 jobs waiting for me. And if I wanted 6, of course, I wanted to teach. With a good degree in economics. So all those things are not counted. Things have changed, and we must change. There are so many areas in Ghana where, at this moment, I've asked my school to put it on the web. We need about 4 drivers. And I say that we are paying between 1,000 to 1,500 for a driver. And I say that, when a graduate sees it and applies and become a driver, I can tell you when he goes there will be opportunities, because every now and then we need teachers. And the driver we know to be, but you ask him, of course, some are getting Uber, but the Uber even, you need some capital. So a graduate can become a driver. There's a construction area, and there are so many avenues that they should be willing to. The third is this, and I will come to more, because this is so dear to my heart, is that some of them must be willing to rescale. When you finish Legon, excuse me to say, with political science, I don't say that intellectually, for me, the reason why all the degrees build your mind intellectually. But hey, how many people have advertised and said that I want a political scientist to employ? No, but you have gotten such a wonderful, or history, or that wonderful equipment. Your mental capacity has been enhanced. If you want to go and learn apprenticeship, I tell you, within a year, you are a master craftsman in an area, and you are the type who will be able to employ other people. I got a young man, got in upholstery. Fortunately, he was doing it by the roadside. Encouraged him to go to the university, finish, and other things. Today, he came to my house. He's employing 17 people, doing chairs. But you, having finished history, you go and be their apprentice there for 2 years. And you have the capacity of setting up your joinery. And you will employ other people. Very soon you will be the one hitting the nails. So the rescaling is important for you to do so. Some of them, they are quite related. When I was doing my second degree, I did marketing. Later on, I became a chartered company secretary. If I wanted, I could shift to accountancy. At that time, I needed only 2 subjects to become a chartered accountant. I didn't charter because I hated accountancy. So I said that if I charter, I'll be tempted to go for money, follow it. So I won't charter.
Deliver me from evil.
Yes. So what I'm saying is this. So if I were an economist and there was opportunity for it, I could shift to accountancy. So generally,
Prof, your idea of rescaling is quite interesting. What you're saying is that every degree really is just to build your mind intellectually. But if you came out of university,
there are few degrees like nursing, medicine, which are specific. But the ordinary, if you finish economics, you can do anything. There's nothing like this economic job for you. Right. So if you don't get a normal economic work in the banking, Ministry of Finance, Charlie, the core essence of a degree is mind development, which unfortunately our universities will come back later, are not doing good at it.
So before we come to that, you're saying that the rescaling that you prescribe is not going to take on another degree or another course.
No.
But you are saying shift into something that is apprenticeship, like joinery, carpentry, metal work.
Yes.
Something that, as they say, in Samejuma.
Yes.
And you give an example of somebody that you guided who now employs 17 people. This is, from the developmental economics point of view, this is exactly what we need.
Yes.
Young people employing 10, 8, 12, 17.
And he hasn't finished building his factory. Now he's building the factory. He has already put in $500,000. He doesn't own a peso on it. This is 2 Sundays ago. I was so delighted that we should do so. So,
Prof, when you see some of these things and you get insulted, does it bother you?
No.
Because people get really upset when you see a graduate should go and do carpentry and so on. You know that, don't you?
Yes, because I don't get bothered because 3 insult me, 2 benefit from it. And for me, even 1 benefited from it. It will be. What I'm saying is this. There are 4 positions in my school for drivers. And the reason why it hasn't been filled, that we are fed these days, you can't have a driver who cannot read, cannot use Google, so that when he's going, you have to be in the car with him.
So some level of education is required.
It's not required because I say, go to, this place in Nungwa. All that I need is to give you the address.
And when you get there, you need to be able to engage, sign a document, do something.
And if you have, in nature. And if you have any problem, engage
Call
me.
Somebody. Okay.
Yes, on there. And so, in other words, we must redefine employment and skills.
So you've talked about personal responsibility, very humbling. You're saying every adult ultimately is responsible for your own life.
Actually, President Roosevelt said it. He said you are responsible for your face. And
for your face?
Face. And
okay.
you know that at least, even if you are ugly like me, if you smile, people don't see how ugly you are.
So that's your first prescription, personal responsibility. Then you go on to humility and say that responsibility starts with humility. And you say don't see any job as below your level. You mentioned the US that the average garbage collector holds a degree. And the pattern is also quite interesting. You mentioned the coffee brokerman sellers who, from your calculation, probably earn more than several people holding university degrees.
And yet, master's degrees. And yet people don't. And if you go in there, you will do it better. Because very soon, by virtue of your degree, you have clients in their offices. You go send them packages because it must arrive warm. You can do so you can do.
Which brings me to the point I was going to make, Prof. One of the things that is very heartwarming for me, and in what we do, we try to.
And soon we'll talk about money, capital, and other things. But go ahead.
We need to get to that because
we'll get there.
But Prof, I would like your quick comment on the fact that many young people with university degrees have gone into delivery services, food. I have a friend who does some brilliant watching here. He has customers, their cars are packed there.
Yes,
and they have stepped out and they're using Instagram to reach out to people. Some of them don't even have an office, they are home, and yet the audience that they are getting. Speak to these categories of people because on one hand, we celebrate them here, but sometimes they may also ask themselves if they could have done something else, or they would have. What do you have to say to people like that?
No. They are in the right track to become millionaires quicker. I'm so proud of my last born. He finished electrical and electronic engineering. 6 months he was sitting at home. Timothy, can I help you get a job or what? Well, I'm going to. Then I heard. He won't mind me. Then one day at church, his friends were talking about, hey, Charlie, I'm working in the bank here. And they says, Timothy, what are you doing? And I was nearby, and I heard him say, he says, I'm building my capacity. I nearly collapsed. I said, hey, what will you take 6 months building your capacity? This boy sat in front of the YouTube. And at one time, he claimed to be one of the 3 topmost photographers in Ghana. Team 1000 West. If you need any,
I've done work with
Team 1000 West. Yes. And
so
a certain time he was employing about 10 people. Now he does it almost part-time. His company is there because I've had him to succeed me as executive director of our school. So you see, he immediately descaled. In his case, even he could have, in fact, for 7 years, Pentecost University engaged him teaching there. But even that he has stopped. Because of so
you celebrate those.
So those watching ones, they are the heroes of the modern age, having been able to transit from Mepedumayo to Miyejuma. And those watching people, I'm sure that they are employing about 20 people part-time with those scooters going around.
Oh, yes. In fact, you try to scope the delivery chain, the value chain, and it was unbelievable.
Yes.
Look at the farmer, look at the person who transports the food, look at the chefs.
And I want some people to do that one for Kelewele. I want them to do that for, right? I mean, this is where, and then of course there are the directly manufacturing areas where they can go, and oftentimes they would need a few support. And here, before I go to the support, they must be willing to start small. There are some young people who come to me and then they bring me a feasibility study, what they want to do, and they are paying themselves $5,000 a month. I said, Machaliko, because if you are going to be an entrepreneur, you are not looking for a salary. You are looking for something that will sustain you while you build up. And you know, in this country, with 5,000, there are so many things one can do, up to about 25. Young people must be willing to start small. And if they want to start small, then they are likely to have someone even willing to dash. I mean, if I see a young man and I can afford 5,000 to support them to make something, I will do so. And they will have angel investors. Again, sometimes they have good ideas. Someone will say, look, I will fund it, and then when you succeed, I have 25% equity.
Let's talk about partnership. Because one of the things that has been the criticism of many young people or many people trying to go out into a business venture is that we have a tendency to want to have it all, own it all ourselves. What would you say about the option of partnership and then also the challenges that come with it?
There are several levels of partnership. One is what I was talking about, whereby it's not even a partner. It's somebody investing in your idea. So he's not a managing partner. He says that, look, get this money, you go and do it. If you succeed, I have 25% equity. If you don't succeed, of course, he loses his money. That is one of the best ways for young people, because the older person, you have his ideas, experience, and he's not just giving you the money, he almost gives you business support and advisory services for free. Then comes your own peers doing the things because of the scale complement. I was talking about my son. He had Pocho, you call him Pocho, but his real name is David. You know, partners, they brought their complementary skills. And so, and then they had a silent partner, not an active one, to be with them in the third phase. And sometimes you may be disappointed, yes. And unfortunately, there are a lot of people who are not trustworthy to be your partners. You have to be careful. But then, even when you are let down once, make sure the legal framework and other things, it doesn't mean you don't start again. Because owing 50% of a bigger 1 million industry eventually is better than owing 100% of a 10,000 business.
Absolutely.
And oftentimes you need various forms of partner, technical partners, financial partners, which is equity, investor, and others. So you need those partnerships. And often, but given that our time is up, give me 1 minute to say that in order to solve our unemployment problem, we should not ask the young people to be on their own. And there are various levels which time will make. First of all, the labor union. There's often a conflict between those who are employed and not unemployed. Because after all, if you raise wages today, it's only those who are employed who benefit, and makes it even more difficult. There's a need, and I think, for the labor and employers to sit down to make sure, because let me tell you, if we don't, those people, you may get a salary increase, but you have to feed 3 of your children who are so-called unemployed. Number 2, I think society, I'm talking about groups, churches and other things, should not just get collections and build big mansions for their pastors and even cathedrals. The National Cathedral is accepted because we need a national monument to reflect that Ghanaians, 70% of us are Christians. A church like, say, Church of Pentecost, Methodist, Presby, Catholic, should be having their own banks, big credit unions, And then employment. I just had a wonderful young man called Mr. Nketia, who has a businessman giving his church 100,000 as an entrepreneurship support. So we can do a lot within this social level. We need to also look at the government. And the government is trying to do a lot. The youth start, and the former, they used to call themselves small-scale enterprises, small-scale industries. Now they call it enterprise.
Ghana Enterprise Agency, yeah.
Ghana Enterprise Agencies. However, at the end of the day, it's improving the general conditions, economic environment, lending rate being brought down, special guarantee for young people when they go in for the finances to reduce the bank's risk. And these things, the government has a lot to do. But finally, given the time, is our education system. We need to change our pedagogy, the teaching method from, learn, chew, pass, pour, and forget, to create critical thinkers, people who are innovative, who see their education not as a passport to a job, but to help themselves. My father-in-law, Pa Willie, says that when he was graduating at Cambridge, one of his professors said, "Willie, you are now being given a tool to go and help yourself." Let us change the attitude of the degree, the certificate, the diploma, from a passport to employment, because there's no employment for everybody, to a tool to go and help yourself. And that change will work wonders, because the Ghanaian young men, they are innovative, they are intelligent, and they can do far more than my generation did.
So your 4 closing prescriptions. One is that in agitating for labor, for salary increments, let's bear in mind that startups will have to pay that high labor fee that they may not be able to afford, and you may end up having more money but having to pay for 3 unemployed people.
Yes. And as an economist, minimum wage is a non-starter. Why minimum wage? It says that for survival. The question is this: if you have a so-called survival minimum wage, you are saying that somebody cannot be employed or paid less than that. The question is that people are willing to accept jobs at below the minimum wage. So what do you do? Yeah.
The second point is that you are seeing that organizations like churches, for instance, that are huge, must consider having their own banks, their credit unions, and entrepreneurial support arrangements within the church, even though some will argue that it's outside their mandate. The third is that you're saying,
by the way, it's not outside their mandate. The church's mandate basically is to worship the Lord, equip the saints, and evangelize. But he must equip the saints for the work of ministry. I don't want a situation whereby, say, the pastor is the chairman of entrepreneurial group, but within the church, they can form that group. There are people there who are businessmen and other things, and you say that it's outside their mandate to help their people to get jobs and other things. No, it's not going to be the elders meeting to do so. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yes, the third is where you talk about governmental intervention. You say something like you start. It's a typical example of an enabler for young people to be cushioned with reasonable credits and support to go into business.
Yes.
And then the fourth is
however, that is not sufficient. The government's major contribution is not Youth Start or even enterprises, EAP, EAG, and the rest. It's to the whole economy, making it easier for anybody, because eventually, let's be honest, when they start all these things, part of it, if you are not careful, becomes NDC and NPP qualification, making the country business friendly, and the young people anywhere can go and get a business support.
Let's wrap up with my favorite part of this program, where I get to share my learnings from my guest. And today, Prof. Stephen Adei has been giving me a few things to chew on. The first is about global unemployment, which he describes as probably the greatest the world has faced since the Great Depression in the 1930s, about 90 years ago. Further exacerbated by COVID-19 and, of course, the Ukrainian war. The second is about Africa's structural unemployment. You see, the Africa situation is probably bigger than the official numbers suggest. And for you would probably be leaning towards 1 out of 2 young people being unemployed. The third is about the implications. Very humbling. You see, it can be very devastating on the personal front, erodes self-confidence, and even can have mental health implications. You mentioned the workplace along with church as one of the most important places for socialization, and you talk about the economic implications for the family, the pressures and potential security implications of unemployment. You see, on the national level, it affects development and growth. The fourth point is about redefining our model. You say in some countries, they have redefined the way they either build roads or do other aspects of their construction or economy just to favor creating employment for their citizenry. The fifth is about attitude. You say that's one of the major causes of unemployment. You mentioned using the 3-month break after your Certificate A teacher training qualification to work as a farm laborer, something that many young graduates would not even consider. And you cite the fact that a white-collar job pays 800 Ghana cedis, and people prefer that to working on the construction site, even if you paid 100 cedis a day and give them 3,000 a month, because it is below their level. That's what you mentioned. It's not
for a graduate.
For a graduate. The sixth is about opportunities. You say, let's face it, the real economy has not also grown as well as it should. And you make a point that the public sector is not the place to look for jobs for, because ultimately, if you added up everything and even rounded it off, it would not employ more than 750,000 people. What it should be is a facilitator for employment. Then you go on to finding our niche, point number 7, and saying that we should make a deliberate effort to find what we are good at and something that works for us. And you give an example about if Ghana, for instance, banned gold exports, it would force stakeholders to process the gold.
Yeah,
and that could create...
Because they cannot go and mine gold in New York.
The 8th is about that big issue of underemployment. You see, if we added that to the unemployment numbers, we conclude that probably the whole country, or majority of the country, is underemployed. Then you mention a very heavy point. You say you think the average Ghanaian is overpaid, something that I know will attract a lot of response. And you say it is not that what they earn is enough to cover their needs. It's much more about the biggest issue, about what they earn or what they are paid, not matching up to their contribution to the organization or the work that they are doing. And that's what you call, I'm sure that's what you call marginal contribution or marginal productivity. Okay. Then the 9th point is about productivity. You say you assumed Office at Gimpa with 400 staff and a turnover of $500,000, $500,000. You left office with recalibrated numbers. I mean, the composition had changed, but still 400 people now earning a turnover of $10 million. And that proves the point that people can be challenged to do more with better systems.
Yes. And that's where I'm not blaming only the worker.
Okay.
Because it's a leadership, management, motivation, and as they produce, rewarding them commensurately. So many things at all. Productivity is not only a worker-determined situation.
Very important point. The 10th point is that very humbling point about ultimately personal responsibility. You see, ultimately, every adult is responsible for their own life.
Yes.
And no unemployed person must blame the government, their family, or their school. You say you made a personal commitment in your youth to never find yourself gainfully disengaged.
Yes.
Even if it doesn't bring any money, you will do something to prove that you are worth something.
Yes.
Prof, the next point you make is about reskilling. You're saying that degrees build your mind intellectually, and
should
they are meant to build your mind intellectually.
Unfortunately, the way we teach often does not do that.
Right.
Yeah.
But all said and done, you are saying that for some kinds of degrees, you will challenge the holders to consider reskilling.
Yes.
And it should not just be another formal degree again, but it should go into things that involve working of your hands, like metal work, carpentry, joinery, and so on. And you cited somebody who is into upholstery, who employs 17 people and is building a factory. That's a case study.
And when you have BSc administration, business administration, unemployed, do masters in business administration. You can do your PhD in business administration. You will still be a bigger unemployed.
Higher level of unemployment. All right. 13 is about the real heroes. See, you celebrate graduates who have been able to boldly step out and do something with their hands, their talent in the area of food, deliveries, and so on. You say they are the real heroes.
ICT.
Right.
I mean, the young men are doing great things around.
Prof, it's unbelievable. Very admirable.
And it's because that they have met, and I hope within 5 years more will do so, because they know that that's where
the money
is, the opportunities are, and that is the quickest way to become millionaires.
The 14th is about financing and support. You say, listen, be willing to start small. You cite Ken Kelly and Toby Afede as an example of starting Data Bank with a loan of $25,000. And you're saying that young people must be willing to start small. Don't bring a business plan with $5,000 salary in it. And in some instances, when you do your things well, an angel investor can come and take a stake in your business and give you
I wanted to help some young people. He said that his ideas, he has valued them at about 1.5 million cedis. So if I want 25%, this is how much. I said,
take your idea.
Take your ideas. I don't need your ideas.
The last one is a very important one, the societal enablers. You talk about labor, being mindful that as we agitate for higher salaries, we are probably disabling young people who are starting, who cannot afford those salaries. Yes. The second is about institutions like churches considering having their own banks, credit unions, and entrepreneurial support arrangements. The third is about governmental investments into youth start and other things to enable young people to get a cushion to go into business, and also improving the wider economic environment for young people. And the final one is that education is not a passport for employment. It is a tool to make life better for yourself and for society. Prof, in a minute, closing thoughts on unemployment and the way forward.
I think that one of the most devastating things for any person is to be unemployed. And I would say that those of us who, by God's grace, are better placed must reach out to them in advisory mode, in encouraging them, in supporting them. Some of them need so little to make it, and direct them. We shouldn't see them as if they are pests to society. No, they are one of the potential tools of making Ghana great and strong.
Prof, thank you very much. And as you talk, it just strikes me that the point you made about self-dignity and self-confidence, the person coming to ask you is themselves already broken, and they need some encouragement to rise up and do something with their lives. I can't say thank you enough, Prof, for finding time for us again. And we look forward to
we can, let me just add, there are so many things we can do. Even, for example, for my personal driver, I'm trying to have 2 people so that it's meant to mentor them, not to be my drivers for life. But, for example, because the existing driver, I want him to go as a mature student to the university. So while he's doing the other one will support him. And there are so many we can share. And when they are there, they don't need to be paid that high. They live in my house for free food, other things, and they need something to. In other words, we who, by God's grace, have made it must know, especially the middle and the upper class, that we have responsibility beyond our children. And if we don't, when we have a social crisis, we are all in it.
The thoughts of Professor Stephen Adei on unemployment and some priceless tips for the unemployed. This has been Springboard, your virtual university, brought to you by the Springboard Roadshow Foundation and proudly sponsored by MTN Pulse, Just Be, the Enterprise Group Enterprise Advantage, UMB Bank celebrating 50 years in banking, and Central University, Ghana's premier private Christian university. Our media partners, the Multimedia Group, and the Graphic Business. On Tuesday, find the full transcript of this conversation on page 18 of the Graphic Business, as well as online at MyJoy Online and springboard.com.gh. Till we come away again next week, my name is Albert Ocran, saying God bless you, and God bless you.